It's not just cops and politicians who need to be held account for unethical conduct. It's also company CEOs. This story involves the bullying by a real estate agency of a vulnerable 79-year-old pensioner and how Belle Property CEO Peter Hanscomb used a threat and duplicity to try and cover it up, and how his own words prove his company is in the wrong. In August 2021, a friend of mine met Peter, who was a 79-year-old pensioner, after he fell over in front of her because his shopping bags were too heavy. Now, after she helped Peter home, she spoke to me about it. And that evening, we went round to Peter's place to see if he was okay, thinking that maybe we could help him with his shopping when he needed it. But when we got there, we were shocked to find that he was living in absolute squalor. He had no lights, very little furniture, no fridge. He lived on noodles, and the place was so cold because the windows couldn't close, and the real estate agent told him he wasn't allowed to have a heater. So over the next week, we got Peter furniture, clothes, blankets, a fridge, lights. We put straps on the windows so they could close, and we stocked him up with food. We bought him a phone so he could call us if he needed anything, and we checked in on him regularly, so he was doing okay. Now, a couple of months later, Peter called and told us he had an eviction notice from the real estate agent, which was Belle Property at Potts Point. We went round, and it was a handwritten note from Diane Toomer saying that Peter owed $1,000, and if he didn't pay it by that afternoon, which was a Friday, he'd be kicked out of his home of 20 years on the Monday. Now, I called Diane and told her she couldn't kick Peter out without following due process, and asked her to send me the rental ledger so we could pay what Peter owed. I rang Fair Trading to find out Diane's registration details, but they couldn't find any record of a registration. Anyway, we sorted things out with the real estate agent, and we made arrangements so his rent was paid on time. You think that'd be the end of it, right? No. Over the next couple of months, they refused to repair the broken lights and windows. They had unscheduled inspections, and they sent text messages telling Peter his rent hadn't been paid when it had been. Ultimately, it reached a point where I lodged a complaint with Belle Property head office in the hope that they would carry out the repairs and stop the Potts Point branch from bullying Peter. But instead of fixing the problem, they wrote to say they would give the landlord notice and no longer manage the property. Now, let me tell you why this was so duplicitous. Belle Property leased out the premises, and they had a legal obligation to ensure it met a minimum standard, right? That meant the light should have worked and the windows should have closed. Belle Property was also required to ensure their agents were registered and followed due process. So Belle Property had violated all sorts of regulations, but rather than fix the problem, they decided to stop managing the property, which meant they could walk away from their violations. In my opinion, that was a despicable thing to do. If a decent person found out that their organisation had forced a 79-year-old pensioner to live in squalor, you'd think they'd step up to the plate, right? They wouldn't walk away. So I wrote back to tell them I thought they were despicable. And then I got an email from the CEO, Peter Hanscomb, telling me I was being offensive, and he wrote what I took to be a threat of legal action against me. But the problem for Hanscomb is that in trying to defend his company, he actually proved that his company was liable. Hanscomb admitted that his company acquired the rights to manage the property on the 1st of November 2021, but the unethical eviction notice was given after that, on the 5th of November 2021. Now, had Hanscomb not told me that, I wouldn't have known. We hear a lot about dodgy real estate agents, but nothing ever happens to them. In this instance, a vulnerable 79-year-old pensioner was forced to live in squalor, in part because of an unethical real estate agency, and the CEO, Peter Hanscomb, should be held to account.